What if Captain America and Black Widow fell in love with each other? You are in the only place where you can find the answer to this question. This is the impossible universe. Steve Rogers crashes the plane he was on in 1945 while trying to escape an enemy attack, and no one can find it until 2010. In 2010, Steve Rogers' plane was found frozen in place. Although 10 years had passed, his body appeared intact, as if he had just fallen asleep. SHIELD agents were immediately called to the scene, secured the area, and transported him to a secret facility. The first thing Steve Rogers saw when he opened his eyes was a room with mirrors on 4 sides and a red-haired agent. This agent was Romanoff. The first question Steve Rogers asked was about his girlfriend in 1945, Peggy Carter. Natasha realized that someone had to tell her that she had traveled through time. Natasha sensed the surprise and concern in Steve Rogers' eyes and paused for a moment. She didn't know how to approach him. "I know this is a lot to take in," she said, her voice softer now. "But you're alive, Captain Rogers, and the world needs you again." Steve needed time. The weeks following his awakening were surreal. SHIELD introduced Steve to the modern world in pieces: technology, history, and the realities of a world far removed from the war he knew. The Brooklyn he loved had changed, the people and places he remembered lost to time. Even his reflection in the mirror seemed like a stranger, unchanged by the decades while the world raced forward without him. Natasha Romanoff, the agent who had greeted him, became his guide. She was sharp and efficient, but beneath her professional demeanor, Steve sensed a kindred spirit. She didn't rush him, didn't overwhelm him with the enormity of his situation. Instead, she answered his questions with patience, offered him silence when he needed it, and nudged him toward understanding the new world in his own time. One day, after Steve stumbled over an iPhone and was baffled by the sheer number of television channels, Natasha smirked. "Don't worry, Rogers. Even I don't understand half of it." Despite the humor, she understood his struggle. "You don't have to adapt all at once," she told him one evening. "Just take it one step at a time." And he did. Day by day, Steve began to find his footing. He learned about the Avengers initiative and the threats looming on the horizon. SHIELD offered him purpose, but it was Natasha who gave him a sense of belonging. As they worked together, Steve and Natasha developed a bond of trust and belonging. She pushed him when he doubted himself, and he steadied her when her past threatened to consume her. Their shared battles and quiet moments deepened their connection, turning mutual respect into something more. Natasha wasn't like Peggy, and Steve didn't expect her to be. She was fierce and guarded, her sharp wit often masking the vulnerability she rarely showed. But in the quiet moments, when they shared stories of their pasts or found comfort in each other's company, Steve saw the woman behind the spy. For Natasha, Steve was different from anyone she had known. He was earnest, unflinchingly loyal, and carried a moral clarity that felt foreign in her world of shadows. He reminded her that there was still good worth fighting for, even when it seemed out of reach. Their relationship wasn't easy. Both carried wounds that time hadn't healed, and the demands of their missions often pulled them apart. But they found strength in each other, and for a while, it was enough. The peace they found together was fleeting. The Avengers faced a growing number of threats, each battle more dangerous than the last. One mission, however, changed everything. An ambush by a rogue faction left Natasha critically injured. Steve fought with a ferocity he hadn't felt in years, clearing the area and rushing to her side. She lay in his arms, her breath shallow, her blood staining his uniform. "Natasha, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice breaking. She looked up at him, her lips curving into a faint smile despite the pain. "Steve, you have to keep going. Don't stop fighting." "Don't say that," he choked, tears blurring his vision. "We can still—" "Promise me," she interrupted, her voice barely a whisper. "Promise you'll keep fighting." He nodded, his heart shattering as her eyes closed for the last time. Natasha's loss left a void that no battle or mission could fill, but her words stayed with Steve, a reminder of the strength she saw in him. He threw himself into his work with the Avengers, honoring her memory by protecting the world she gave her life for. Though the pain of losing her never faded, Steve carried her with him in every fight, every decision. She had taught him to navigate the complexities of the modern world, to embrace the uncertainty of life, and to find hope even in the darkest moments. Years later, when the dust of war had settled, Steve found himself back in Brooklyn, standing before a plaque commemorating the heroes who had shaped the world. Among the names was Natasha Romanoff. He traced her name with his fingers, his heart heavy but full of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, for her love, her courage, and the light she had brought into his life. And though their story ended in sacrifice, it remained one of love, resilience, and the enduring power of two souls who found each other in the chaos.